Hey everyone, I'm back home for a day, so I'm going to pump out another episode for you guys and try to keep this rolling. We're going to recap week 16 in the NFL season. I can't believe it. It's week 16 already. The season's flying by. 2 more regular season weeks left, and then the playoffs are here. So to recap this weekend, we're just going to go through all the games as quickly as I can, give my thoughts, and start looking ahead to week 17 and the home stretch. So the playoff picture is starting to kind of take shape. Really, one of the biggest questions left out there is just who's going to win the NFC South, and that division winner will host a playoff game, and the one who doesn't win the division is most likely completely out of the playoffs. And right now the battle is between the Atlanta Falcons, who, as we know, benched Kirk Cousins, started Michael Penix Jr., and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So to recap, I'll start with those two teams. First, the Falcons came through. They got a huge win. I mean, they also played the Giants. So they played the New York Giants, who are pretty much in full-on tank mode, trying to secure that number 1 pick in the draft. Michael Penix Jr. played pretty well. The one interception he had was not his fault. Michael Pitts just didn't catch it. Essentially hit him right in the hands, and he just bobbled it, dropped it, and the defender picked it off. But ultimately, for Atlanta, the real test comes now. Moving forward, they play at Washington in Week 17, and that's the real test for them. Let's see how Michael Penix Jr. does on the road. First real, I would say, tough NFL matchup for him. As like I said, the Giants were kind of a breeze. They had no issues handling them. They beat them 34-7. And again, Atlanta regained control of the NFC South because Sunday night Tampa lost to the Dallas Cowboys. So the Cowboys hung on to a 26-24 victory when they had nothing to play for. They were eliminated from the playoffs right before that game kicked off. So they were playing for pride and for probably their coach, Mike McCarthy, to see if he sticks around for another season or not. So that was a huge loss for Tampa. Tampa had full-on control. They controlled their own destiny. If they just won this game, they had 2 more easier, you could say, I guess, no game's easy in the NFL. That's why we love the NFL. But the matchups they had left this season weren't as difficult. This Dallas game was probably the toughest one on the schedule, and they, had a chance there at the end to drive down and try to kick a game-winning field goal. But Bucky Irving fumbled essentially, and the Cowboys, he got the ball ripped out out of his hands. The Cowboys took over, and that was the ball game. So as of now, Atlanta's the NFC South division leader, but I think this weekend is when we will know exactly how this will all play out. Again, Tampa has got a relatively easier schedule, and really the challenge for Atlanta comes this weekend on the road at Washington, who will jump right to them. The Commanders beat the Eagles this weekend. This was a game where I looked at the score, and Washington was down by like 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and I was like, all right, so Philly's got this down. That Philadelphia Eagles pass rush will get home to Jaden Daniels, and they'll take care of this victory. But nope, they did not. Jaden Daniels brings Washington back, so the Commanders get that win. Huge momentum for them, and a big loss for Philly, but maybe not bigger than the loss of Jalen Hurts, who was out about a quarter into this game with a concussion. Obviously, I don't think it's anything long-term. He should be back. But because they dropped this game, now even if Minnesota and Detroit, let's say, drop a game here or two, the Eagles are kind of playing from behind, playing catch-up to try to get the number 1 seed. So that's most likely out of the realm for them. So they doesn't look like they'll be able to get that first-round bye, especially because Detroit plays at San Francisco this weekend. And San Francisco at this point is not really playing very well. So I fully expect Detroit to take care of business. And then if it comes down to, Minnesota not being able to kind of, let's say Minnesota loses to Green Bay this weekend, and then they can't catch up to Detroit, then at that point, the Lions might not even be playing the Vikings might not be playing for too much at that point. And if that's the case, then maybe Detroit can get, the W in Week 18 as well, and, keep Philly completely out of the number 1 seed. So that was a big win for Washington. Carolina, Arizona came down to the wire, and Carolina pulled it through in overtime. I think the biggest thing to take from this is the quarterback play. Bryce Young was benched earlier this season, then came back and has been playing way better. And on the other side with Arizona, they've got some major questions with Kyler Murray and whether or not he's their franchise guy. I think they're kind of stuck with him, at least for another year with his contract. But what do you do there? This is his 6th season, and they haven't really had any success or significant success. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. Buffalo, New England. New England was up in the beginning, and it just looked like one of those trap games for Buffalo. But Buffalo ends up pulling through. They only won by a field goal. They did not come close to covering their spread, which was 14. But at this point, Buffalo is just rolling, trying to keep track with Kansas City. But it doesn't look like Kansas City is going to let up that number 1 seed. It looks like they will get that first-round bye. And if they do, I mean, that's huge for Kansas City. They've obviously been battle-tested anyway. Last year, they went on the road for all their games to get to the Super Bowl. So, not that they need home field, but that's just an extra week of rest for Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and that, Kansas City team that is being very much slept on. They played on Saturday. They beat Houston. They took care of business, and they just keep winning. People can keep hating on Kansas City, but they just keep winning, and I think people need to respect that and understand, like, this team is still number 1. You can say what you want about the rest, but once you start blaming the rest every single game, it's probably because you're just jealous and you're just hating on the greatness of a football team. The other Saturday matchup was Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Wasn't really much of a matchup. Baltimore kind of took control. Pittsburgh was, just didn't seem like they were up to, to the standard of the Ravens. And again, we have to mention that George Pickens was out for this game. That's the number 1 receiver for the Steelers. But I do think even with Pickens, yes, he opens up the field more, but it just seems like other than them being divisional rivals, Baltimore's just on a slightly different tier. And really the biggest thing I take away from this is that they put up 34 points, and George Pickens doesn't play defense. So, the strength of Pittsburgh is their defense. And the fact that Lamar kind of seems like he kind of figured them out. They try to take away Lamar's running from this game, and all that did was make Derrick Henry go for $162. So that changed everything. And the fact that, Derrick Henry was able to kind of take over this game, now it just presents a problem. If they were to face off in the playoffs, it seems like Baltimore hasn't figured it out, but we'll see how that goes. Chicago, Detroit smacked them. There was really no contest. Caleb Williams put up some big numbers. A lot of them were garbage time numbers. The story from this game is pretty much whether Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, was showing off or not with this fake fumble / trip play that he ran with Jared Goff. And I've heard some people say it's kind of foolish for him to run this trick play being up by so many touchdowns. But you got to think a guy like that's got something in the bag. And I don't think he was showing off for Chicago. I mean, we're in 2024, damn near almost 2025. They can watch tape from all the other games. He doesn't need to show off in person. They know what Ben Johnson can do. They've watched the tape. So if he is auditioning for the head coaching job in person, that would be foolish. I don't think he's doing that. He's just, this Detroit team, I think they're fun. I think they want to try new stuff. I think they, Kansas City ran similar plays, trick plays before where they were like running around in circles to break the huddle. I think some of these teams that are just so good on offense want to try things out because it keeps it fun for them. And at the same time, you want to keep defenses, guessing all the time. And so this is just another wrinkle I think they added. Cincinnati destroyed Cleveland. Cincinnati needs to win out and needs some help to get into the playoffs. It will be challenging. I don't think they'll be able to sneak in, but if they do, they could be dangerous. Their defense is really the issue, though. Yes, they only gave up 6 points to Cleveland, but Cleveland is kind of throwing the towel on the season. They're not even starting Jameis Winston. So at this point, I don't know how much that really means. Indianapolis took care of Tennessee. So that was big for them to, keep track to make the playoffs ahead of Cincinnati. If they win out, they have a good chance. At that point, I think if they win out, they're in. The Jets hosted the Rams. The Rams took care of business in that game. The Rams could be dangerous in the playoffs, but sometimes I feel like they have the potential to be a very powerful offense, and then they'll have lulls during games where they're not really scoring a lot of points. But with a team that has Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua, and obviously Sean McVay as the head coach, I think come playoff time when they're getting ready to really, lock in, I think they could be pretty dangerous. So we'll see how that all plays out. Minnesota, keep keeps on winning and keeps track with Detroit. They won at Seattle. Obviously, that's my favorite team, so I had all eyes on that. Sam Darnold came through in the clutch in the fourth quarter. I'll do a different pod where I will talk about what the Vikings should do with Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy in that whole situation. That just seems like a very pointless conversation to be having right now. This is week 17 coming up of the season. Let's finish the season. Let all that get settled later. But I don't think it's as complicated as what the Vikings should do. I think it's pretty simple. I'll talk about it in a separate podcast. Jacksonville, Las Vegas, quite possibly one of the dumbest wins of the season. But at the same time, you can't blame Antonio Pierce and the Raiders players. I'm glad that it's this way. They were holding on pretty much to the number one pick in the draft. So all they needed to do was lose their last few games, and they had pretty much their picking for who they wanted number one. But no, they beat the Jaguars at home. And now they will drop from the number one pick to the number 6 pick. So we'll see how it plays out the rest of the season. So maybe a very, very costly win for them as it drops them like 5 spots in the draft. But I like what Antonio Pierce said. He said, hey, we're playing this game and we played to win. And I like that. I believe in that kind of karma. I don't like really, yes, it's a smart thing for teams to tank. But I think the integrity of the game, and I think, that winning culture means something. Obviously, for free agents, the dollars are what mean mostly everything. But at the same time, you want to go to a team who wants to compete and wants to play winning football, even if it might hurt their draft stock. So, I mean, I kind of respect that. In the last few here, San Francisco at Miami, I thought it was going to be a closer game. But like I said, it looks like San Francisco just has thrown in the towel. They're eliminated from the playoffs. And I think those guys – I'm surprised that they have so many veterans on that team, pretty solid head coach, and for them to be getting beat like this in Miami against I don't think it's such a good Dolphins team. It's kind of surprising to me. And now they host the Lions next week, so we'll see. I mean, it could be a surprise if they show up and play Detroit tough, but it does seem like they've thrown in the towel. And then to top it off, the sleeper team in the NFC that I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it because I'm realistic, the Green Bay Packers. They look really good. They shut out the Saints. They only shut out the whole season. Green Bay won 34-0. This game was over very quickly into the first quarter pretty much. And they just look like they made the Saints look like they don't belong in the NFL. This is a very scary team. I don't know how they're doing it because they don't have the huge superstar player, but they have a hell of a coach and the pieces work and the receivers. Maybe they don't have the A+ receiver, but they have a whole bunch of B+ receivers. And sometimes I think maybe that could be more dangerous. Jordan Love, I struggle seeing it with him because he doesn't, to me, sit with the Joe Burrows, with the Josh Allens and Patrick Mahomes. But the man wins. And whether it's him or the coach, the man wins. And that defense, I'm a big defense guy. Defense wins championships. It's the saying for a reason. And if this defense is going to play like this, well, what's to say they can't, play tough against the beast of the NFC? They are a beast in the NFC at this point. Keep in mind, if the Vikings and Lions weren't having such crazy seasons, the Packers would probably be talked about up there as, they're maybe going to finish with 13 wins themselves. So at this point, they're playing the best football of the season right now, and they are rolling. So we'll see how that goes. They are going into a very exciting matchup next weekend against the Vikings. As a Viking fan, yes, I am scared. I think the Packers are rolling right now. And so, and I think it's a lot to gain and not much to lose for Green Bay at this point. Obviously, I think if they beat Minnesota, it's a huge, momentum win for them. And mentally, I think it'll give them a lot of confidence going into the playoffs that they can just beat anyone, anywhere, as this game is being played in Minnesota. And if the Vikings win, I mean, yeah, it's cool, but then really the win is just to set up the Week 18 matchup in Detroit to try to get the number 1 seed in the NFC. So it's kind of one of those where I think the Packers are playing with house money and could be very dangerous for this game on Sunday. So we'll see how it all shakes out. That's the recap. Like I said, I'll do another episode here where I'll talk about my beloved Vikings and the quarterback situation. And it's kind of annoying me that it's being talked about so much, but I will break it down in a quick little clip. And hopefully you watch that video as well. So see you there.